Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Humikane at YouTube with another modelling video. For the first time in a little while, I've put together a Mecha Musume figure custom. Started this at Bayonet in November last year with the intention of building one. I got this figure online very cheap and picked up this Stuart Tamiya 48 scale kit off a fella who attempted to build, paint and put about $150 worth of resin aftermarket parts, do a proper competition build, ruined a small decal, lost interest and passed it on for $2. A lot of the construction was done at the event. Being a whole tank, I cut it right down the center in half and pulled apart other bits such as the end and underside of the tank, rearranging all the parts into two legs with feet being reinforced with 1mm thick styrene sheets, and the fairly sturdy resin turret would be also split in half and used at the front and rear side of the figure, dictating a turret of the torso above the hull of the striker units of the legs. After the event, a large aluminium turned with a bit of brass howitzer cannon was purchased, magnets applied, and a lot of the components started to stick to the figure. The two striker units are also attached via 3x10mm round rare earth magnets. With the profile of the legs done and assembled, a lot of the components left over with the kit were assembled and used to detail, such as tank tracks and smaller hull stowage and militarized detail. Since the figure itself is really recognizable, some of the belts were removed and the tank tracks added to the hips. The corset was cupped with a bit of zimmer on the sides and underneath the breasts, and the hair was fiddled with to create a bit of a helmet hair effect. As the base of the kit is American, very bulky, as Stuart, I decided to go for a heavy tank destroyer look from the Korean War. Each of the armor components, once completed and assembled, receive a coating of putty and textured up with a cotton swab to get a cast rough look. The finish of this tank is going to be heavily weathered. Quite a bit of rivets using chopped up round styrene tube were glued all over the place as well. Around the cannon and some other areas such as the leg insertion points had two-part of putty applied and textured to look like rubber dust covers. The metal component was brushed on with Mr. Hobby metal primer in a bottle. Everything else was airbrushed in Tamiya lacquer surface primer. The actual torso of the body, where there's flesh and whatnot, to avoid masking, those components were hand painted in Tamiya surface primer. Luckily, this came out very neatly. The torso is going to be sequenced sort of like a go-go dancer with very thick glitter nail polish that I've found in a $2 shop. So everything was hand painted blue to have some sort of undercoat, and many layers. We're talking about 7-8 layers over a long period of time were applied one after the other, as the glitter was quite spartan and separated to get a heavy build up for a very interesting look. The rest of the tank components were shaded in a few colors and effects of tank armor and dark and light greens, with a very little amount of dirt weathering and probably a touch of rust here and there. This was started with the darkest of greens and blacks shaded at the very bottom where shadows would be caught, and green would be built up to a lighter point where it would be mostly focused from natural light in a stylized manner. Also consider, a lot of these components are very large, very bulky single pieces. They would have to be hand painted or airbrushed by hand without mounting anything on skewers or supports, so I was only able to paint one surface or one side at a time, allowed to dry and flip without ruining or being impatient. This was particularly very hard with the figure as well as the striker units. Once dry and gloss coated, a large selection of decals were applied to make the striker units themselves interesting, followed by the weathering process. Being a tank, I went fairly hard. There's a few products I bought in Japan that I wanted to experiment with, as well as go hard with MIG pigments and be more familiar with it. As it's still in a glossy look from the decals, I applied many levels of sludge wash, starting with a medium level black, just capturing all the shades, details, panel lines and whatnot, and then very heavily thinned down rust, sands and dirt, applying a coat in a sludge manner, sometimes wiping off excess, sometimes applying it so thin it's almost like a filter, allowing each layer to dry appropriately. Once it's done, I applied a flat coat of acrylic Tamiya matte. Matte by Tamiya in acrylic really adheres well to all sorts of pigments and weathering methods. With a large palette of MIG pigment around the place and different colours, small amounts of pigment was dabbed in various places, dirt and sand in flat areas where they'll catch, rust on edges and on flat surfaces that are horizontal to create streaking from rain and whatnot, sorts around engine areas, all sorts of areas. Once all applied, with a large brush, I would dip that in MIG fixative and dab it on all over the areas, mixing some of the colours or just concentrating some of the colours. This will take a long time to dry, and the pigments disappear and turn invisible at first, but once it dries they come out quite vibrant and they're permanently stuck to the paint. This was done in 3 layers. Once a heavy load was put on, I just tweaked and put little bits of colour here and there to build volume, definition and interest in a weathered look yet clean. And when I'm talking clean, I don't mean showroom clean, but not heavily battle damaged, sorted or anything, just enough to travel around, build soot, build dirt, just wear and tear from just everyday travel and not necessarily heavy combat destruction or being maimed as I usually do with very heavy rust schemes of a post-war item. A lot of the decals gave it a bit of character, a bit of interest. Some of it was of a tad of an anime Atasha theme. This is just a lot of fun. The kit is just a throw together, cheap figure, cheap tank bits, and experimenting of all sorts of pigment, placement of decals, practice of some techniques, and some way somehow it's come together and just tied together really nicely, especially with the nail polish gloss coating glaze of the clothing. I forgot to mention with the hair, a lot of that was epoxy sculpted to just change the profile so the figure was no longer recognizable to its original character, as well as the color scheme change and whatnot. Hair hand painted, the highlights freehand airbrushed. The sculpting bit was pretty interesting and just created an extra character that's very unusual to this genre. Regardless, thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for more videos. I hope you've enjoyed this. This was just literally a scrap build of just more or less unwanted stuff I've come across, either cheaply or for free, and just did experiments as heavily as I could until this popped up. I'm very pleased. It's a crowd pleaser. It's a bit controversial. It's a bit raunchy, completely within my taste and highly enjoyable, especially for engaging with individuals and displaying. I can't wait to see what happens at model shows. Catch you later.